Hello everyone, so let's get started of our tutorial today. So we'll be going through the topic of demand and supply. And as usual, we will go through the key concepts in this chapter of demand and supply, as well as to discuss the questions and to complete the attendance exercise during this tutorial. Let's start with the horizontal interpretation and vertical interpretation of the demand curve first. So when we are talking about horizontal interpretation of the demand, it is something like this. You're given a particular price and you wish to find the corresponding quantity. So this is said to be the horizontal interpretation of the demand curve. So what you're trying to do here is to find the corresponding quantity demanded with this particular price. So you are figuring out the number of units that buyers are willing and able to buy at this particular price. Right? So for a usual demand relationship, we will have something like this. When the price increases, the quantity demanded decrease. And if you add a little bit of condition, vice versa, and ceteris paribus, then that would be the complete picture of the law of demand. Right? So this is the law of demand. And we also have another interpretation, the vertical interpretation of the demand curve. So this the other way around. You're given a particular quantity and you are going to find the corresponding price. Okay. So what you are trying to figure out here is the maximum price buyers are willing and able to pay at this particular quantity. Or if you put some jargons here, it is simply the marginal benefit of the marginal buyer for this quantity. Okay, so using the graph here, given the quantity of 4 lobsters, the corresponding price according to the demand curve is $4, which means that the marginal benefit for the 4 lobsters is $4. So this is what the vertical interpretation of the demand curve tells us. Right? So we have something similar on the supply side. Again, the horizontal interpretation and vertical interpretation of the supply curve. So for the horizontal interpretation of supply, so you are given a particular price and you are going to find the corresponding quantity according to the supply curve. So you're finding the units that suppliers are willing and able to sell at this particular price. Okay. So for a usual supply relationship, price and quantity supplied will move in the same direction. And again, if you add the vice versa and ceteris paribus condition, it will be the law of supply. And finally, we have the vertical interpretation of the supply curve as well. So you're given a particular quantity and you wish to find the corresponding price according to the supply curve. So this would set to be the vertical interpretation of the supply curve. And you're finding the minimum price that suppliers are willing and able to sell at this quantity. Or equivalently, it is also the marginal cost of the marginal seller for this quantity. So again, using this diagram as an example, given the quantity of 2 lobsters, the corresponding price according to the supply curve is $4, which means that the marginal cost of producing the second lobster is $4. So this is what the vertical interpretation of the supply curve tells us. All right, so what's next? It will be about the horizontal aggregation. So how can we derive the market curve from the individual curves? Okay, so let me take the demand as an example. Okay, so if we are talking about the market demand, okay, it will be the individual demand of the first person plus the individual demand of the second person plus the individual demand of the third person and so on. Okay, so this is how we can derive the market demand curve. And similar logic for the supply. We are adding up the quantities here. Okay. So referring to the first remark here, to derive the market demand and supply, we are summing up quantities instead of prices. So what the remark is trying to remind you is that you are not doing like market price equals to the price paid by the first person plus the price paid by the second person and so on. Okay, you are not trying to do something like this. It is not reasonable as well. What makes more sense here is to add up quantities instead of prices to derive the market demand supply. Okay. All right. The second remark, if individual curves have different y-intercepts, then the market curve would kink. And in fact, why does the market curve kink? It is because there's a change in the slope of the market curve across different price range. So using the left-hand side diagram here as an example, okay, as you can see, when the price is across 50, there will be a change in the slope of the market demand curve, right? And this change in slope is due to the change in the number of buyers across these price range, right? So when the price is above 50, only the blue buyers were able to buy at such a high price, right? While the green buyer is not going to buy any positive units. So the market demand curve when price is above 50 only incorporates the demand expression of the blue buyer. However, when the price is low, okay, below 50, then both the blue and the green buyer are buying positive units. So the market demand curve should incorporate both the individual demand of the green buyer and the blue buyer when the price is below 50. Okay, so as you can see, if the individual demand curves have different y-intercepts, then there will be change in the number of buyers across some price range, and this lead to a kink market demand curve. And similar logic for the supply side as well. All right, so that's all for this part. And the next thing to review is about market equilibrium. So when we say the market is at equilibrium, it refers to a situation where price and quantity has no tendency to deviate from the current condition. And it is given by a condition where quantity demanded equals to the quantity supplied. And graphically, it is simply the intersection between the market demand and supply curves. And of course, there are situations where the market is in disequilibrium. So the first case is a shortage, or we also say that excess demand. And it is given by a situation where the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. So referring to the first diagram here, as you can see, at the price of $4, the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied, and there's excess demand in the market. And graphically, the price of $4 is below the equilibrium level. Okay, so shortage would emerge when the price is below the equilibrium price. While in the second case of disequilibrium, the market is having surplus or excess supply. So using a graph below here, okay, at the price of $8, the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded, and there's excess supply in the market. And graphically, the price of $8 is above the equilibrium level, and this causes excess supply to emerge. All right, so finally, the concept to review is about consumer surplus and producer surplus. So let me make up an example to illustrate these concepts. So imagine the situation of buying a bottle of water. Right? So you are now a consumer who is willing to pay $8 for a bottle of water. And let's say the price of this bottle of water is $5. Then in some sense, you as a consumer is gaining $3, right? 8 minus 5 equals to $3 per bottle of water. So how can you interpret these numbers? So you're willing to pay $8, and this is actually the marginal benefit from consumption. And the price of the bottle of water is $5. So this marginal benefit minus price is kind of the consumer surplus that you can obtain from this bottle of water. And since consumer surplus is actually in total terms, we are trying to add up these individual gains to obtain the total consumer surplus. So this is how we can calculate the consumer surplus. Right? If you distribute this summation sign inside the bracket, it will become the sum of marginal benefit minus sum of prices. So the sum of marginal benefit is actually total benefit. Why? Because the difference in total benefit is marginal benefit, and this the other way around. The sum of marginal benefit will be total benefit. But minus the sum of prices, it is something like the price of the first unit plus the price of the second unit plus the price of the third unit and so on. It's kind of doing something like the price multiplied by the quantity. So price times quantity is actually the total expenditure of the consumers. So this is why we say consumer surplus is total benefit minus total expenditure. So let me try to locate the areas of total benefit, total expenditure, and thus consumer surplus in the graph here. When we are talking about the market equilibrium level, the total benefit is actually the area under the demand curve until the market equilibrium level. So this yellow trapezium is the total benefit at the market equilibrium level. And likely you may ask, why the area under the demand curve is total benefit, right? So this is because the demand curve is also said to be the marginal benefit curve. If you would like to obtain the total benefit, it's actually summing up the marginal benefit at different units, right? Okay, so something like this: add up this unit, add up this one, add up this one, and so on. You're kind of integrating the area under this demand curve until the market equilibrium level. So this explains why the area under the demand curve is the total benefit. All right, so how about total expenditure? It will be the equilibrium price multiplied by the equilibrium quantity. So this purple rectangle will be the total expenditure. And finally, the consumer surplus is the yellow trapezium minus the purple rectangle, which explains why the upper green triangle here is the consumer surplus at the market equilibrium level. All right, how about from the producer side? Again, using the example of this bottle of water. So the price is also $5. And imagine you as a producer this time, it requires a cost of $3 to produce this bottle of water. Then in some sense, you as a producer is earning $2. Okay, 5 minus 3 equals to 2 per bottle of water produced. Okay, so the $5 is actually the price, while the $3 is actually the marginal cost of producing this bottle of water. So P minus MC is actually kind of the producer surplus that you can obtain from this bottle of water. And again, since producer surplus is in total terms, so we will add up these individual gains to obtain the total producer surplus. So if we again distribute this summation sign into the bracket, it will be the sum of prices minus the sum of marginal costs. So the sum of prices is P times Q, right? Something like that. And from the view of a producer, it will simply be the total revenue. While for the sum of marginal cost, it will be total variable cost. Because why we are putting total variable cost instead of total cost here? Because a fixed cost should not affect the marginal cost, and this is why we only put the variable part here to denote the sum of marginal cost. All right. So again, if we locate the areas of total revenue and total variable cost in the diagram here, okay, total revenue is simply the same area as total expenditure, the purple rectangle here in this case. While the total variable cost at the market equilibrium is simply the area under the supply curve until the market equilibrium level. So this orange trapezium is the total variable cost at the market equilibrium. And finally, the producer surplus would be the purple rectangle minus the orange trapezium, which explains why the blue triangle here is a producer surplus. Okay, so I hope this consolidates your understanding of the concepts consumer surplus and producer surplus. And this basically what I'd like to review with you. And please take a look at this problem before I go into the explanations. Right, so let me start with question 1 to determine whether there is excess demand or excess supply at the rent of $2,000 and by how many units. So we just need to plug in the price of 2,000 back into the demand and supply curve respectively to obtain the quantity demanded and quantity supplied, and then to obtain whether QD or QS is greater. Okay, so let me show you more details. Right, so I just plug in the price of 2,000 here, and we have quantity demanded 3,000 and quantity supplied 1,000. And obviously, quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied, so there will be excess demand. And by how many units? It is simply the difference between quantity demanded and quantity supplied. And it will be 3,000 minus 1,000, which is 2,000 units of excess demand. And actually, we can solve this problem using GeoGebra as well. And let me again shift my screen to GeoGebra to demonstrate with you. Okay, so you can see my GeoGebra screen as well. So to start with, we need to type the market demand and market supply curve. Okay, so market demand is y equals to 8,000 minus 2x, while the market supply is y equals to 2x. So be aware, because the quantity is on the x-axis while the price is on the y-axis. So this is why we are using x to substitute q, while putting y to substitute price, the p. Okay, so we have the demand supply curve here. And to check whether there is excess demand or excess supply, so we just draw a horizontal line, y equals to 2,000 in GeoGebra. Okay. Right. So obviously the range of 2,000 is below the equilibrium level, so there will be excess demand. And by how many units? We just need to find the gap, the difference in the quantity demanded and quantity supply at this price of 2,000. So we just need to find the intersection points here. The quantity as suggested by point A will be the quantity demanded, 3,000, while the quantity as suggested by point B will be the quantity supplied, 1,000. So the difference would be 3,000 minus 1,000, which is 2,000 units of excess demand. All right, so let's move on to question 2 to find the consumer surplus and producer surplus at the market equilibrium. So obviously the market equilibrium is at this level, and the consumer surplus is simply the triangle above this orange line, and the producer surplus is the triangle below this orange line. We can actually use some functionality in GeoGebra to help us quickly obtain the area of a region. So let me introduce this function to you. Click Tools again, and then scroll down to click More, and then there should be a thing called Polygon. Okay, Polygon. What you need to do is just to click the vertices of the area that you're looking for, okay? And then end with the point that you have started. So this is the area of the consumer surplus. So as you can see, GeoGebra gives you the value 4 million. Okay, do the same for the producer surplus. Just click the vertices of this triangle and end with the first point you started, and GeoGebra will help you calculate the area of this triangle, again, the area of 4 million. And this is how we can quickly find out the area of the region in GeoGebra. All right, so that's all for this problem. And let me go back to the slide and let you take a look at the next question. Okay, so we are going to observe how the change in the buyer affects the consumer surplus and producer surplus. So let's recall the definition of consumer surplus here first. It is total benefit minus total expenditure, while for producer surplus, it would be total revenue minus total variable cost. So we are going to observe how the change in the buyer affects the components in consumer surplus and producer surplus. So let's see. Kathy is willing to pay $40 for a Subway, while Ellie is only willing to pay $35. So if the buyer of this Subway changes from Kathy to Ellie, then the total benefit from consumption would decrease from 40 to 35. How about the total expenditure? Because no matter whether Kathy or Ellie buy the Subway, the price is still at $30, right? So the total expenditure is same, 30. And apparently the consumer surplus decreased, right? We can determine that already. Originally, the total benefit is 40 minus 30, which is 10, while after the change in the buyer, the new consumer surplus will be 35 minus 30, which is 5. So the consumer surplus actually decreased by $5. But anyway, let's still analyze how the producer surplus would change. So for the total revenue, it is essentially the same as total expenditure in this case. While for the total variable cost part here, since in this description, there's nothing about the cost, right? So we just assume that there will be no change in the production cost. The subway is already produced anyways. So this is why the producer surplus should remain unchanged. And the only correct answer would be B, the consumer surplus decreases. Okay, so that's all for question 3, and please take a look at the following problem. Okay, so to find out the market demand curve, we know that the demand curve should be flatter and flatter as price goes down. And as you can see in 2, 3, and 4, there are some ranges that the demand curve becomes steeper as price goes down. So 2, 3, and 4 could not be the correct answers. And in fact, 1 and 5 could be a possible shape of the market demand curve consisting of 3 individuals. So for 5, it should be quite straightforward. If the 3 individuals have different y-intercepts for their individual demand curve, then case 5 will occur. But how about the first diagram? Under what situation would the first diagram occur? It will happen when the 3 individuals have the same y-intercept for their individual demand curve. Then in that case, the market demand curve would not kink. Right, so that's all for question 4, and please take a look at the following problem. So for question 5, likely you may think that we need to derive the combined demand curve, but actually we do not have to do so at the moment. So let me show you the steps. So actually, we just need to plug in the price of 18 back into the individual demand of the East Utopia and the West Utopia respectively, and then to sum up their individual quantity demanded, and then this would be the answer to question 5. Right, so if you happen to put in the price of 18 back into the demand of the East Utopia, you will be obtaining a negative quantity, which is not logical, right? So this means that we just take it as 0, right? The quantity demanded of the East Utopia is 0. But if you plug in the price of 18 back into the demand curve for the West Utopia, then you have a positive units, which is 800. Then the total quantity demanded from Utopia as a whole would simply be 800 units, 0 from East Utopia and 800 from West Utopia. All right, so you can actually do it in GeoGebra as well. What you need to do is to type the individual demand of East Utopia and West Utopia demand first, And then to draw a line, y equals to 18 to denote the price of 18, right? So as you can see, at the price of 18, the quantity demanded from East Utopia is a negative value, right? So we just take it as 0. While for West Utopia demand, okay, the quantity demanded is 800. So the total quantity demanded from Utopia as a whole would be 800 units. All right, so for question 6, if the total quantity demanded from Utopia as a whole is 1,719 units, what would be the willingness to pay of the marginal consumer? So this time we really need to derive the combined demand curve. And be aware, to derive the market demand curve, we are summing up quantities instead of prices. However, the question gives you the demand curve using price as a subject. So this is why we need to do the change of subject using Q as a subject first. Right? So after doing the change of subject, we are now ready to derive the market demand curve. And be aware, the market demand curve is king at the price of $8. So why? Because when the price is above $8, then only West Utopia is buying positive units. While if the price is below $8, then both the East Utopia and West Utopia is buying positive units. So this is why the market demand curve is in two expressions across the price of $8. Right? Specifically, when the price is below 8, we need to sum up the individual demand of the East Utopia and the West Utopia. While if the price is above 8, then we only include the individual demand of the West Utopia. Right? So this is how we can obtain the market demand curve. All right. So graphically, it will be something like this. When the price is high, right, above 8, then the combined demand curve is only reflected with the West Utopia demand. While if the price is below 8, then we use the combined expression, okay, the orange portion here. Okay, when the price is high, then the green portion, while if the price is low, then the orange portion. So the yellow king curve is actually the combined demand curve in question. And to find out the willingness to pay of the marginal consumer at the quantity 1,790 units, it is actually applying the vertical interpretation of the demand curve. So we are finding the corresponding price according to the demand curve at this quantity 1790, okay? So which is 1.47. This price of 1.47 is automatically the marginal benefit of the marginal consumer for this unit. So the answer to question 6. All right, so that's all for this problem, and we'll move on to the next one. Please take a look. Okay, so for this question, we are going to find the marginal willingness to pay for the sixth unit. So how can I do that? So actually, we can ask a series of questions. Let's say when the price is $9.5, what happened? In this case, the market quantity will be 1 and it is purchased by Allison. And this $9.5 is reflecting the willingness to pay of Allison for the first unit. Right, so continue with this series of questions. Let's say the price is a little bit lower at $7.9. Then the market quantity will be 2, which are both purchased by Allison. And the willingness to pay for the second unit would be 7.9, reflecting the willingness to pay of Allison. And let me demonstrate for one more unit. If the price is a little bit lower, let's say $7.3, then the market quantity is 3, and the third unit is purchased by Philip. And willingness to pay of the third unit is $7.3 reflected by Philip. Okay, so keep continuing this, and you should be able to find out the marginal willingness to pay for the sixth unit is $6.5 purchased by Philip. And this is why we are kind of ranking the willingness to pay in such an order. Okay, so this completes the problem, and we'll move on to the next question. Please take a look. So similar to the previous question, we are going to ask a series of questions to solve this problem. And this time we are dealing with the supply side. Okay, so to find out the equilibrium price when the total quantity is 8 apples, how can I do that? If the price is $7, then the total quantity supplied is 1, which is produced by supply 1. Well, if the price is now higher, let's say $9, then the total quantity supplied is 2, which are both produced by supply 1. And if the price is now further higher, okay, let's say $12, then the total quantity supplied is 3, 2 produced by supply 1, and 1 unit supplied by supply 2. Okay, so continue with this logic, and you should be able to find out that when the price is $20, then the total quantity supplied of apples is 8, 5 units produced by supply 1, and 3 units produced by supply 2. Right? However, we want only 8 apples, but not 9 apples. So this is why we cannot have the price to be too high. Okay, if the price reaches 20.5, then supply 1 will be producing the 9th unit, right? So this exceeds the target. So this is why the equilibrium price has to be between 20 and 20.5, such that 8 apples will be produced. And ultimately, as you can see here, 5 units will be produced by supply 1, and 3 units will be produced by supply 2. Okay, so that's all for this problem, and we'll move on to the next one. Please take a look again. Okay, so for question 30, we need to find out the market equilibrium price and market equilibrium quantity. So it is actually find the intersection between the combined market demand and the market supply. So again, we need to derive the combined demand curve first, and it will be kink. When the price is above 87, then only group A is buying positive units, but not for group B. While if the price is below $87, then both groups A and B are buying positive units. So this is why we need to express the market demand curve into 2 expressions. And again, we need to do the change of subject using Q as a subject first, because we are summing up quantities instead of prices for the derivation of the market demand. Okay, when the price is below 87, both groups A and B are buying positive units, so we need to sum up the individual demand expression for groups A and B. While if the price is above 87, then only group A is buying positive units, so we just need to put the demand expression of group A consumers. So we can now go to GeoGebra to find the intersection with between the combined demand and the given market supply curve. So let me move to GeoGebra here to solve this problem with you. Okay, so let me type the demand expression. When the price is high, then only group A is buying positive units, while if the prices are low, then both groups are buying positive units. All right, so this is the combined demand curve. Let me highlight that to you. Okay. So when the price is high, the purple expression, while if the price is low, then the gray expression. All right, so this red highlighted portion will be the combined demand curve. Okay, while for the supply curve, it will be P equals to 0.5Q or Y equals to 0.5X. All right, so to find the market equilibrium point is simply the intersection between the red King curve and the green supply curve. So we just need to collect this point, right? So point A will be giving us a result. Equilibrium price 65.25, while equilibrium quantity is 130.5. Right, so remember, the X coordinate is reflecting the quantity while the Y coordinate is reflecting the price. So don't mix them up. So question 31, to find the total consumer surplus at the market equilibrium level. How can you do that? And this time, the consumer surplus is actually not a triangle anymore because the demand curve is kink. So let's recall the definition of consumer surplus, which is total benefit minus total expenditure, to find out the components step by step. All right, so for total benefit at the market equilibrium level, it will be the area under the demand curve until the market equilibrium level. So this blue strange area is the total benefit at the market equilibrium level. While for total expenditure, it will be the equilibrium price multiplied by the equilibrium quantity. So this orange rectangle is the total expenditure at the market equilibrium level. So this explains why the consumer surplus is the blue strange area minus the orange rectangle, okay, the upper quadrilateral here. So again, we will use the functionality in GeoGebra to help us calculate the area of this quadrilateral quickly. So click Tools and to find the polygon function. Here, just click the vertices of this strange area and then end with the first point you started. GeoGebra will help you calculate the area quickly. Okay. As you can see here, the area of this polygon is 6,149 point something. Okay, so this is the consumer surplus in this question. Remember, it is not a triangle because the market demand curve is kink. All right, so that's all for this problem. And let me go back to the slide for you to glance through the last problem in this tutorial. And by the way, the main focus will be in question 10, because question 9 is essentially the same technique to find the market equilibrium point. All right, so let me quickly go through the steps for question 9 about the market equilibrium point first. We need to derive the combined demand curve. When the price is above 677, then only group B is buying positive units, while if the price is below 677, both two groups would buy positive units. Okay, so to derive the demand curve, we assign our quantities instead of prices, so we need to do the change of subject, express Q in terms of P first. Okay, sum up the two individual demand expression when the price is low and only the demand expression for group B when the price is high. Okay, the intersection between the combined demand curve and the given market supply would be the equilibrium point. Okay, graphically, it will be point A here. So if you find the graph here not easy to view, then you can take a look at my drawings here. Okay, so this could better understand the position of the market equilibrium point. Okay, this point A in my drawing is actually the same point A, this screenshot. So if you're trying to look for the numbers, you can take a look at this screenshot. Well, if you're looking for the positions accurately, you can refer to my drawings to better locate the areas or the points. Okay, anyway, market equilibrium quantity 781 point something, while market equilibrium price is 651.25. And let's move on. For question 10, the central planner forces the economy to reduce production of the good by 50% of the market equilibrium level. What will be the welfare loss compared to the case where the market has no intervention? So the welfare loss here is actually the deadweight loss or the loss in total economic surplus compared to the maximum level. All right, so how can we deal with that? So the new quantity after government intervention is actually 781 point something divided by 2, right? The 50% of it. So this means that the new output level is 390 point something. Okay, the number I have put down here. So how can we find the deadweight loss or the decrease in total economic surplus by moving from the market equilibrium level to this new level? So at the market equilibrium level, the area of total economic surplus is the area constrained by the demand curve and the supply curve until this market equilibrium level. So this yellow quadrilateral is the total economic surplus at the market equilibrium level. While at the new quantity, 390 point something, the area of total economic surplus will be the area constrained by the demand curve, supply curve until this quantity of 390. So this green trapezium will be the total economic surplus at the new quantity. And as you can see, the total economic surplus is decreased by this red shaded area, okay, the area CFAE. So to find the welfare loss, we just need to go to GeoGebra to find out the area of this quadrilateral. Okay, as you can see, the area here, CFAE, would be the deadweight loss that we are looking for. And it gives the value 36,000 and something. And again, if the points are too close to each other that you cannot understand the area, you can always refer to my drawings here to understand the shape of the deadweight loss here. All right, so that's basically what I'd like to cover in this tutorial today. And by the way, next Monday is actually a public holiday, so we will not have tutorial next Monday. So tutorial 4 would be conducted next Wednesday evening on Zoom, okay, the usual time. So this is just a reminder for you. And it will be the time for the attendance exercise, and please complete sets A and D. And I'll give you 5 minutes to close the quiz at around 9:21. Thank you. 1 minute left for the attendance exercise. Okay, so time is up and I'll close the quiz now. And again, thank you very much for joining the tutorial. And if you have any question, you can stay behind and ask them. If not, we will see each other next Wednesday. Thank you.